This neighborhood is a house where souls never rest. You're invited to share their secrets.
I've been waiting for you boys.
You're invited to share their tales.
Unless, of course, you're scared.
Tales of madness. Of revenge.
The dolls don't want you there. They want reparation.
Of horror.
He thinks he needs to kill the monster.
Now, your most terrifying nightmare and your most frightening reality are about to meet on the streets. Tales from the Hood. Chill. Or be chilled.
Hey, man, I don't need to be hearing this, man.
Written and produced by Darren Scott. Written and directed by Rusty Cundiff.
Hey there, cursed dolls, crooked cops, monsters, and morticians.
Welcome to another episode of What Happens in the Crypt.
Again, we decided to highlight Black creators and creatives.
Today we are talking about the 1995 film Tales from the Hood.
This movie was written by Rusty Cundiff and Darren Scott. It was also directed by Rusty Cundiff. George Arthur Rusty Cundiff is an American film and television director, actor, and writer known for his work on Fear of a Black Hat, Tales from the Hood, and he worked on Chappelle's Show.
A synopsis for this movie is a funeral director tells 4 strange tales of horror with an African-American focus to 3 drug dealers he traps in his place of business. Taglines for this one include chill or be chilled, which is my favorite. That's in the trailer, too, at the very end. You'll have to add that in. It's like a spooky voice. It's like, get out, but that's chill or be chilled. And also, your most terrifying nightmare and your most frightening reality are about to meet on the streets.
Trigger warnings include racism, domestic violence, gang violence, drug use and abuse, violence towards children, police brutality and violence, and images of slavery. But with this movie, it's not like gratuitous for no reason.
Yeah.
This movie is trying to make a point.
It is a horror comedy, but it touches on some serious issues, so there is imagery of those issues throughout.
The movie starts with a trio arriving at Sim's funeral home to purchase some drugs, or as they say 1,000 times, the shit.
Where's the shit? Yeah.
Now, where's the shit? The shit? The shit. The shit that you found. I found a whole stack of them in the alley. Whoa, 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 whoa. You get it when we get the shit. The shit. The shit. Drugs. You get the drugs, then I get the money. Kill that noise, man. Let's just get the shit. You'll get the shit. You'll be knee deep in the shit.
As for all horror anthologies, we meet these 3 characters, and what connects all the stories is this funeral home, as the mortuary director, Mr. Sims, kind of walks them through and shows them different caskets and tells them about the story about the body of the person inside.
He claims to have found drugs in the alleyway and has stored them towards the back of the mortuary.
So he spins these tales as he's walking them back to get their shit.
The first casket they come across contains the body of Clarence Smith, a man who was rumored to have heard voices of the dead calling his name.
That takes us to the first story, which is called Rogue Cop Revelation.
This starts as the story of a young black police officer named Clarence Smith, and it's his first night on the job.
They're calling him rookie and stuff, and you can tell that the other police officers don't really take him seriously yet. But what he thinks is just a regular traffic stop, a guy was speeding or whatever, ends up turning into this vicious attack of the police on the guy that they pulled over, Martin Morehouse.
And he's a civil rights activist. Martin Morehouse is.
And they kind of make Clarence wait in the car. They're look up his license plate. And while he's doing that, they're beating the shit out of him. And he kind of is totally helpless in this situation and being bullied by them.
Eventually, Clarence can't take any more, and he jumps out of the car and says they just got to take him to the hospital. But the other cops refuse to listen to him. Also, the other cops are all white.
Yeah, he's the only black cop. The white cops tell Clarence, like, yeah, we're going to take him to the hospital. Don't worry about it. And they separate. So he's no longer a part of what's happening. And while he's in the car with his partner tells him not to be a rat. And like, you can't tell on other cops. There's like this code between them. And he's like, you're never going to say what you saw tonight.
And the one cop, like, inciting all the brutality, his name is Strom. And he's just like, even the director, Rusty, says that he's supposed to be like the personification of a crooked cop.
Yeah, totally.
Like, he is like the example of the most crooked of cops.
Right. And while they're beating up Morehouse, he's like, part of the reason they're attacking him is because he was trying to uncover this whole sting within the police force that they were trafficking in like heroin into the community. Of course, though, they don't take him to the hospital.
No, they take him to the docks.
Right. And they end up planting the drugs in his trunk. And they do... Oh, I guess we should add drug... Did we put drug use and trigger warnings or, like, injections?
Drug use and abuse.
Okay. So they end up injecting him with, I guess, what would be, like, an overdose. And they drive his car into the lake. River? Where are they supposed to be?
I don't think
Ocean?
The body of water matters so much. But what matters is that doing this is not only killing him, but it's also, like, tarnishing his reputation. After this night, it cuts to a year later, and Clarence has left the police force and is now just, like, a drunk.
In one of these, like, drunken walks through an alley, he sees this big graffiti of Morehouse, and it's him, like, on the cross. Mm-hmm. And it comes to life, and it's very terrifying. And Morehouse tells him to bring them to him.
After calling up the police that did this, they all agree to meet at Morehouse's grave. Of course, he's drunk, and the police are basically just, like, disrespecting him right away, and they look like they're gonna beat him up, and Strom, the big bad cop, urinates on Morehouse's grave.
Mm-hmm. It's very upsetting. At the same time, Strom is obviously like the ringleader, and he's forcing the other cops to also pee on the grave.
And they're briefly talking about how they're gonna kill Clarence as well.
It's a lot going on.
A lot of bad stuff going on.
Yeah.
But as the other cop goes to pee on the grave, the grave, like, blows apart. It, like, bursts open.
And then you see that I was so hoping this would happen when the first cop, the big guy, was peeing on it. I was like, he better reach up and grab him by the dick and pull him down. And it did happen with the other guy.
And he gets dragged, like, underground, and then Morehouse's coffin, like, shoots out of the ground, and the cop is in there with his heart ripped out. Right.
And oh my god, the makeup for Morehouse is so good. He's standing on top of the grave, like, holding his still beating heart, and it's so metal.
When the other cops see this, they open fire, although the bullets don't seem to do anything. And then they run away like the cowards that they are.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, they flee because they're like, what is happening? And it shows the two police officers being in the one car, and they're driving erratically, like smashing into parked cars, like just being insane. And then Morehouse lands on the hood.
I wasn't originally going to say this here, but it's funny that you mentioned, like, the driving erratically and the stuff. That actor is Tom Wright, who plays Martin Morehouse. And he's actually the hitchhiker in Creepshow 2.
Right, yeah.
What is it? Like, can I get a ride,
Can
lady?
I get a ride, lady?
Can I get a ride, lady?
That's the scariest story, too.
And this scene is actually kind of similar to that because he keeps showing back up and he's, like, on the car.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of similar. It's like another revenge story.
Thanks for the ride, lady. Thanks for the ride, lady. Thanks for the ride.
If you haven't seen Creepshow 2, definitely watch that. We'll do an episode on it.
It's debatably my favorite one.
It's real good. Mm-hmm. After landing on the car, Morehouse, like, what is it? He, like, rips his hands through the top of the car.
Yeah, he just kind of punches through, like, superhero-esque.
And then he grabs Strom by the head and just tears his head right off.
Mm-hmm. Not enough blood in this scene, in my opinion. But it's still good. Because you see him, like, go all the way up, and then he just drops back down headless.
Yeah. And then the other cop, like, slams on the brakes and gets out of the vehicle and then shoots the car until it explodes. Mm-hmm. This next part is one of, like, the best scenes in the movie. Morehouse chases the police officer Newton down the alley. He seems to have a lead on Morehouse, but then Morehouse starts to, like, telekinetically throw needles into him.
Yeah. I don't care how he got the power, but, like, it's fine.
Zombie
it's
ghost
so
him.
good.
There's, like, I don't even know how many needles. Like
a lot.
Oh, yeah, dozens of the needles. And then he gets, like, a couple in his back and he falls down, and this is the same place where the mural of Morehouse is. And then he crucifies the cop
with the
needles.
It's fucked. It's so wild.
And then the last needle, the cop is screaming, and the needle hits him in the mouth, and then he melts into paint.
Yeah, the bubbly effect is so weird. It's very cool. It looks very much like Evil Dead, like when the zombies start to fall apart.
And then, yeah, the cop is forever a part of the painting.
Yeah.
Symbolizing the police brutality. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
It's so
transformation. Good. Although this is not the end, because Morehouse goes to the cop Clarence and basically is like, why didn't you help me earlier?
So in some way, Morehouse wanted to get revenge on him, knowing that, like, this would ruin his life. And the next scene we see, he's in a mental institution, like in a straitjacket.
And he's taken the blame for the cops' deaths.
And that's the end of story one.
Yeah, and that's the end of the first story.
They're all so heavy.
My favorite part of this movie is that, like, it didn't have to be horror. They could have done this without it. But it's just, like, it could have been a story of, there's no ghost, there's no zombie, it's just a cop getting revenge. But that, like, this is so much more fun. This is so much cooler to watch.
Right. It helps you, like, digest the message without it being so hard. The second story in the anthology is Boys Do Get Bruised. This one opens with a little kid named Walter, who's maybe like 7 years old. I'm
Something
so
like that.
bad at judging children's ages. He could
a
be
young
11.
kid.
I have no fucking idea. And he's going to school, and he keeps showing up with bruises, and his teacher starts to ask him questions.
I would say this is I think this is the most upsetting of the stories.
This one, because, too, it leans so far away from the supernatural elements of it. It's just pretty real with, like, except for, I won't skip ahead, but, like, the ending, you know? So.
And the boy's teacher, Richard, is actually played by Rusty Cundiff.
I did not notice that, even when we just watched that documentary.
Oh, yeah, I noticed it right away.
Oh, my God.
As soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, he directed, wrote it, and acted. He's amazing.
I did not even realize that was him. But to be fair, he's got, like, dreads
Yeah, he's
in that
got, like,
scene.
short little,
and then the documentary we just watched came out 2 years ago.
Yeah, so he does look
little different.
looks drastically different,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's him. And initially the school thinks it's like there's a class bully named Tyrone, and they blame it on him at first. But actually Walter, the kid, is saying it was a monster that did it.
And I get it, but it is kind of sad in some of the, like, conversations they have. The teacher is like, well, we're not going to talk about this until you can be real with me about it. And it's like, he's a little kid and he's trying to express it. He doesn't know how. It shows Walter being inside during recess, and he's drawing a picture of the monster and also of the bully Tyrone. And the teacher asks him why he's not outside, why he's doing this, and he tells him that he heard if he draws a picture of them and destroys it, then they will stop hurting him and leave him alone. And pretty much as soon as the teacher leaves the room, he crumples up the image of Tyrone, and he sustains weird injuries that they can't explain. He just kind of crumples outside.
Yeah, they said he fell down the stairs, but they're like, how do you break both your arms and both your legs from falling down the stairs?
Right.
Later that night, Mr. Garvey, the teacher, decides to visit Walter's home and asks his mom, Sissy, about the monster. Right away, she says that it's just Walter being clumsy, and you again just get the vibe, the horrible feelings that...
Right, and she's like, I keep telling him to stop it with this monster business. He's just a klutz, blah, blah, blah. And while the teacher is there, Walter's, I think, is it his dad?
Stepdad.
His stepdad, Carl, who's played by David Alan Grier.
Which is very weird to see him in this role.
Jumanji.
He's more known for his, like, comedy and more lighthearted content than this. But he does a fantastic job here.
No, he's really good, but it's just like, aren't you going to talk about the monkeys that stole your motorcycle, man? Like, what are you doing?
Without there being much that Mr. Garvey can do, he has to just leave. But it is soon revealed that Carl is actually the monster.
And this reveal is so good. It shows Walter, like, cowering in the corner, and the door opens and you see the shadow of a monster, and the arm, like, outreaches, and it turns out to be Carl, and then as soon as it actually shows his face, it reveals that it's not a monster. It's a very cool transition.
Like, a monster's voice. And he literally says something that's just like, so you like to draw people as monsters? Or, yeah.
And just, like, growling.
And he's saying that Walter's, like, mocking him, and like, he's not really a monster, and if he likes to draw people as his monsters, then he'll be a monster. And then he takes his belt off, and this is when his mom comes in. Yeah, but he just starts hitting them both with his belt.
Yeah. And from outside, the teacher, who hasn't quite left yet, can hear her screaming and sees, like, in the window what's going on.
And he bursts back into the house.
While this, like, horrible fight is going on between Mr. Garvey and Carl, Walter ends up grabbing his drawing and starts to crumple it up.
It's not a fight. The scene is Carl is just beating them.
Yeah.
Like, the teacher tries.
I want to say it's a fight.
The teacher tries, but he is not winning.
As soon as Walter starts to crumple up the paper, though, Carl crumples into, like, a puddle of a body.
Yeah, it's cool, though, because he doesn't just crumple it all at once. It's like, it starts with an arm.
Right.
It's like the arm that he's using to, like, punch and hit with, and then it just, like, curls back and breaks. And then his other arm, and then his legs, and then he's like this puddle of a man.
Yeah.
But even as the puddle, he's just like, I'm not done with you, bitch!
Yeah. And so they end up turning on the stove, and Walter sets the paper on fire, and that's how they destroy him.
And it cuts back to the funeral home, and there's actually like a charred, crumpled skeleton in the
casket. Yeah.
And when the casket closes, a doll falls off a nearby shelf.
Which leads us to our third story, which is called KKK Comeuppance. I like the names of the stories.
I know, me
They're
too.
also not in the movie, so
No.
that's why I like that they're here, because I think that they're worth mentioning.
And before it cuts to the story, Mr. Sims is just like, he explains, he's like, this is no ordinary doll, but it's a vessel for a lost soul. Except he says it way cooler and creepier.
Yeah.
Because he's such a good actor.
It's really good. This next story shows an election that's going underway in the South, and it follows the main guy, Duke Mecker, who is like the whitest fucking dude on the planet.
God,
and
yeah.
it shows one of his ad campaigns that basically, in so many words, is like, you didn't get that job because they were forced to give it to a minority. And it's like, I'm an original American. It's horrible.
Yeah, but you're watching it and you're like, man, this was made in the 90s and I could see this on TV now.
It's like, didn't Trump release that ad? No?
Yeah. Oh, did we mention that he's a former KKK member? I don't think we mentioned that. But yeah, just to like add it, just to make it even worse. There's like multiple cherries on top to his racism because he's in his new home, which was like a historical landmark that he is now living in anyways because he's the senator. And there is currently a group of Jewish and African American protesters to try to protest him and get him out of office.
Not only is the plantation like up for debate as far as being historical significance, but it's also apparently haunted, and that is something that the reporters and the news keep asking Duke Mecker about.
While all this is going on, they're also talking about how there were supposedly these haunted dolls that were on or in the building, he's consulting with his image maker.
That's a thing in politics.
But it's his assistant that he's trying to do I want to say make his campaign look better? But I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess.
That's like what you do if you're like an image person. Yeah, because there's a line in there where he's like, by the time I'm done with you, you're going to have the whole black community voting for you. So that's like his whole job is like trying to sugarcoat the nastiness that he actually is as a person.
In his office, there's a large painting of who is called Miss Cobbs, and she is the voodoo witch who transferred the slaves' souls into these dolls that she created. And the two are like joking around with this camera in this next weird scene. It's almost like...
Yeah, he's like, this is how you should answer the questions, and like you can watch this back afterwards and practice, like when it comes to the stuff about the house.
And this scene is so weird because his assistant is a black guy, but they're both saying racist stuff.
Right.
And it's at this scene and they're doing this at the top of the stairs for some reason, but you see somehow now one of the dolls is there and the assistant trips on it and falls down the stairs and dies.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it cuts to like the funeral, and everyone is asking Duke if the house really is haunted, if he's seen any of the dolls, and you can tell he's struggling to like remember the stuff that they practiced, and it does show him like actively sitting down to rewatch those tapes.
And he actually sees one of the dolls in the limo, and then he throws it out of the window.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he starts to like rewind the tape, play it again, rewind the tape, play it again, and in the tape he sees the same doll.
Yeah. It's after pretty much like the same moment he sees the doll on the tape, he looks up at that big mural on the wall and sees that one of the dolls is out of the painting. Yeah, and then this is the first time he fights with the doll. It like gets up on his chest somehow and is like attacking his face.
Flies at
I don't
him
know how
and
it gets
bites
up
him
there.
in the neck. He's just...
But he, of course, ties it to a dartboard and starts shooting like a literal gun at him, right?
Well, yeah, but first he puts it, he like traps it into like an American flag and starts like hitting it around.
Yeah.
But then now it's like captured and yeah, he ties it to a dartboard.
And shoots at it with a shotgun.
Shoots it with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And in the process of all this, he damages the painting and it actually like bleeds, which is actually really creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy.
And suddenly more and more and more of the dolls start to disappear from the painting.
He has like another brief instance of the same first doll trying to get him, but he slams the door on him and he's kind of like panicking and laying on the floor when he sees like the crowd of dolls starting to approach him.
And he tries again to use that American flag to cover himself. Maybe the freedom will shield him. It doesn't.
Nope. And while the dolls are like eating him alive, we have a brief moment where Miss Cobbs, the voodoo woman, appears in the flesh, and she's like in her little rocking chair, and she just kind of watches them.
Yeah, as
and then
they're
she
like
goes back.
tearing him apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually pretty cool.
And also, I saw that this was in here too, but that was actually director Rusty's mom.
Yeah,
and his dad is in this one as well as the preacher.
Yep, that's a cool little Easter egg in it. Meanwhile, back in the mortuary, the three are growing impatient. One of them recognizes a corpse in the other room. It's actually another. He's not a gang leader. He's just a guy in a different gang.
I think so. They don't really specify like who's in what or whatever.
But anyways, they recognize him as Crazy K.
Which leads us to the final story called Hardcore Convert.
This story is about Jerome Johns, a.k.a. Crazy K. And he's just like a gangster, but he just like kills people for like no reason. Mm-hmm. One of the first scenes, he's literally just driving down the street and just sees somebody he doesn't like and kills him.
Yeah, like follows him and shoots him down. And at the same time, when he shoots down this guy, his friends or whoever from inside the house where he chased him to come out and shoot at K.
And they shoot him. They shoot him multiple times, but the cops show up, and there's actually a few like lines about how he's like, "Of course, I'm getting saved by the cops."
Yeah, this one's cool because it has that whole like inner monologue happening.
So then Crazy K is arrested. He survives his injuries, and then he gets a life sentence.
Right.
After this, it cuts to 4 years later, where Crazy K is still in prison.
And this is where we meet Dr. Cushing, who says that he's qualified for this, like, experimental trial. And if he does it, they'll let him go. And, of course, his cellmate is, like, the most white supremacist, tattoos of Hitler, swastika,
if that guy,
everything
if
on
Strom before was the epitome of, like, the corrupted cop, this is the epitome of the white supremacist.
Yeah. And, of course, they are cellmates, and they actually can reach each other through the bars.
Don't they hit each other a couple times?
Yeah, it's like he wants him to hit him, and he ends up punching him through the bar somehow.
Yeah, because he's just, like, raving and bragging about killing black people, and Crazy K's, pissed and just swearing at him, and then he punches him in the face. And then he's just like, well, who'd you kill?
Right.
And he's like, I think then he just stops talking because he's basically only killed black people, too.
Yeah. And of course, we find out this was part of the experiment, was that the doctor wanted him to be around someone like him, or that would upset him. It's definitely interesting. Like, she's like saying, like, your mentality about black people is the same as his mentality, even though it's obviously not. But she's trying to pull the similarities together.
And then basically he's just kind of like tortured.
Yeah, they put him on this crazy table.
He's like, actually in the Blu-ray we watched the interview, they said it was supposed to be like a Clockwork Orange kind of torture, starting with they shave his we haven't mentioned his giant sideburns yet, but he has these giant sideburns. And the starting is shaving them off, which is basically like kind of taking away his own personality and style. And then, they strap him to the gyroscopic modulator. This is where it's kind of like Clockwork Orange. And they force him to see images of, like, lynchings and KKK stuff. And it's very upsetting. Yeah.
But it's kind of like conversion therapy, basically. Like, if you look at something horrible over and over and over again, you'll stop doing it.
And the next part, he's, like, dropped into this... I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's
sensory deprivation thing.
Right, it's basically like a empty room with a strobe light, and there's no other source of light there.
And it's here where he's forced to confront the souls of the people he's killed. And one of the most upsetting scenes for me is this, where one of the souls is like a little girl, and he's like, "I never killed you," and she was like, "It was a stray bullet."
Yeah. Just, like, further, like, showing the scope of how far his violence has reached. And, of course, the more these people confront him, like, he just gets more and more defensive. And he's like, you don't know me. You don't know what I went through. Like, I have reasons for this. And he basically just deters all blame.
And then it cuts back to the moment where he was shot. And it turns out that this was kind of just, like, his dying moments.
Right. Or divine intervention or something, you know?
Yeah, I took it as almost like even in the world where you got saved, you're still a piece of shit. So now he's just left to die in the street.
Right.
I didn't do anything. I was playing in my room, and the bullet from your gun came through the wall.
A bullet ain't got no name on it. You was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Shut up! Shut the fuck up!
Why should they, Jerome? Are they saying something you don't want to hear?
So you gonna blame all this shit on me? Huh? You trying to make me crazy or something, motherfucker? Huh? I don't hold no responsibilities for these motherfuckers.
But you are responsible for the lives you've taken, for the dreams you've turned into nightmares.
Nightmare? Motherfucker, what about my nightmare? What about the nightmare I lived in?
And finally we have the ending, which is just so great.
The whole movie is so great. Back at the mortuary, we discover that the three men that have been going on this journey through the mortuary, we never said their names, Stack, Ball, and Bulldog, are the ones who killed Crazy K.
Mr. Sims finally takes them to the coffins where the drugs are, but the coffins are opened.
And inside is their bodies. Ooh. And these three dudes have the best screams. This whole reveal is so satisfying. It hits like every like comedic note that it should, but it's also actually kind of scary to be like, oh my god, they were dead the whole time.
Yeah. It's revealed, and there's like a flashback. I guess it'd be considered a flashback where it's like, yeah, they killed Crazy K, and for killing Crazy K, his friends killed them.
Right.
And it's here that it's revealed that they're in hell.
Yep.
And I know you want to talk about the fire.
Well, the tongue first.
Oh, yes.
So when he reveals that they're in hell, he says, "Welcome to hell, motherfuckers." And then when he opens his mouth, the little gap he has, a little tongue shoots out.
Little
It's
CGI
fucking
pink
amazing.
snake tongue.
But then he transforms into Satan and this like gigantic devil, and it shows the three guys in like the flames, but they are just kind of like waving their arms around, and it's so fucking funny. It's like, what's the like car wash thing? Wacky waving inflatable arm guy. That's like what they're doing.
But now they're on fire.
Yes, CGI fire.
It's such a good ending.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And he just laughs. Mm-hmm. That actor who plays Mr. Sims / Satan is Clarence Williams, and he's just great. I love him.
He's amazing. I can't believe he hasn't been in more.
He was in Creepshow and some other things.
But yeah, he has the best eyes, the best gap, like, iconic.
Yes! Ain't no funeral! Ain't the Teledome! Neither! Welcome to hell!
With this movie, you can't really find too much online, and we actually bought the Blu-ray like the next day.
Yeah, I bought the Blu-ray because I honestly loved this movie so fucking much that I just wanted to have it, but it by chance had a documentary on it.
And it was, what, 30, 40 minutes long? And it was amazing.
It was
and it
so
had
good.
So many details that you couldn't find anywhere else.
And interviews with everyone, including the Chiodo brothers, who they're pretty like, they do a lot of interviews, but because most of their work is so old, they never quite adapted. You know what I mean? To the newer age. I feel like it's hard to find anything recent with them. And this documentary came out in 2017, and it's called Welcome to Hell.
Yes. And you might recognize the Chiodo brothers. You know, they worked on Elf, and most importantly, Killer Clowns.
Yeah. But they've worked on a ton of stuff, and stop motion is their jam. And obviously they did all of the puppets and everything for the KKK story. And speaking of the Chiodo brothers, they reused a lot of those dolls in their movie Team America World Police, which came out in 2004.
But the Blu-ray interview starts off right away with writers Rusty Cundiff and Darren Scott basically saying the issues in this movie are real, but told in a more fun and entertaining way to reach a larger audience. This says real issues of police brutality and corruption, abuse from father figures, racism, black-on-black violence, gang violence. Just, it has a lot.
Yeah, it touches on a lot of serious issues and things that are still relevant fucking 25 years. It's older than that. How old is this movie? 95?
So 25? That's 25
Oh, I was
years
right.
ago.
Okay, so 25
26 years ago now.
26 years ago, and it's still very relevant.
But even with those very serious matters, they had a lot of fun shooting it. The graveyard scene was actually shot in a real graveyard. This graveyard was actually 2 blocks away from Rusty Cundiff's childhood home.
Yeah, I loved that when he talks about how it was like funny to think about like walking past that graveyard as a kid and now coming back and being allowed to like dig a hole and set off some explosions in there.
Yeah, that explosion was real. It was what they call an air mortar that exploded the grave for real. And this is amazing because most movie graveyards aren't real graveyards, but they had the real chance to do it.
I wonder how they were able to swing that.
know a guy.
Isn't the whole thing like you could damage other graves?
Oh, yeah.
Which is why they wouldn't let you set off an explosion?
I think it's just he probably knew a guy who knew a guy that knew the owner, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they probably had an agreement, like, if you damage anything, you're paying for it. Morehouse actually holding the beating heart was a last-minute decision. Originally, he was just supposed to be standing there. Right, which would have been fine, but it's cool that they came up with that. It's just wouldn't have been as impactful, dramatic, and a lot of this movie's over the top. It just wouldn't have been as fun. Right. But there was actually an interview with special effects supervisor Kenneth Hall, and they were talking about how, they just did all that last minute, like the hole in his chest where his heart was, that was all then and there, just some blood and extra stuff they had. Yeah, and from watching this documentary, it sounds like they just had the most talented on deck, hands-on people that they could have, because it was hey, what if? And it was cool, give me 20 minutes and a roll of paper towels, and they were figuring it out. In the scene, too, when you do see Morehouse's open chest, you see, glass in there. I thought this was just interesting. It's supposed to be a crack pipe. Oh, yeah. Which I didn't even they said it looks cool, but it doesn't quite register as that. But I thought that was an interesting part as well, as far as the practical effects go. And the syringes that are thrown are also practical. They're put onto wires, and they're just kind of controlled that way. The monster story was based on a real thing that happened in Rusty's childhood. So he talks about in the documentary, and he gets so emotional during this part, and you can tell how much this really affected his whole life. That he was friends with a neighbor boy down the street, and he was there playing one day, and when they came downstairs, his sister, who was 7 years old, was hog-tied and facing the wall, and he was really... gagged. And he was really upset by this, but his friend was just oh, she just got in trouble. And he went home and told his dad, and his dad basically was I can't do anything because they're a white family. And his dad was a member of, the juvenile crime division of the police. Yeah. But knew that because it's a white family, he couldn't do anything about it. It was so horrible. I just, watching him talk about it, you could just see it, and that he's never quite recovered from it. That's just, it's fucked. But so that's kind of where the influence for the monster story came from. The shadow of the monster that you see is actually the same makeup they use later for Satan. It's just the same headpiece. And I guess his name's David Alan Grier, right? Yep. He just held it up over his face, and then when they spun it around, he threw it to the side. Yeah. It's smart. Yeah, it works. But I thought it was funny when they talked about that and they showed the little clip. You could see the flick of him throwing the mask. The belt that the monster uses was made of a special lightweight foam so that he could actually be there and hit her with it, and it wouldn't hurt her. The makeup artist said in the interview that he could hit her for hours and never leave a mark. Which is crazy too, because it looks like a real belt. Yeah, it looks just like a real belt. It doesn't look like a prop, but yeah. And I don't want to say I like that they did that, but... Yeah. It's much more impactful seeing him with actual force, right? Yeah. It makes you really, really hate him, like you're supposed to. And on that note, the creator said that during screenings and at the premiere, that some people actually cheered in the theater when the monster dies. I love that. I would have too. I think I probably was getting very excited when we watched it. I don't know. I was so sucked into this. The makeup artist behind the monster... Because, in that episode, there's some crazy stuff. The limbs breaking and the Satan makeup was headed by makeup artist Screaming Mad George. To do the limbs breaking, the set was elevated so that fake limbs could be puppeted around while Greer's actual limbs and body were hidden under the floor. And they said, too, that for some parts there was also a second person under there to be his arm that's too far away from his body to be real, and that it was horribly uncomfortable, and it took a long time to shoot to get it all right. I love the comment that director Rusty Cundiff made towards the end of this scene was that he made it a point to say, Even if I made this movie today, I would have never used CG.
Yeah. Which I love.
Mm-hmm. A bit more on Screaming Mad George. His real name is Joji Tani, who is a special effects artist, film director, and former musician. He was born in Osaka, Japan, and emigrated to the United States, where he has become known for his surreal, gory special effects. He has collaborated with director and producer Brian Yuzna on many films. George is also known for working on This Is the End, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and Big Trouble in Little China. We may do a future minisode on George.
Yeah, because not only did he head the makeup for this scene, but he also created the full Satan makeup and the prosthetic that we'll get into a little bit more.
We'll post a picture of the full Satan makeup because you don't see it long enough
so
to fully
short.
appreciate it.
And even I think as soon as that scene was over, I was like, that's all that they're going to show for this amazing makeup. The twisted and burnt skeleton that we see in the casket was also like a last minute addition where they decided, yeah, we're gonna
show it.
We need to show it. And so Kenneth Hall scrambled and he said he had to go get a skeleton kit from another company that he used paint, cornmeal, paper towel, spray glue, and foam to create the skeleton looking like burnt and also like contorted into those weird angles.
Rusty Cundiff gave special praise to art director Tracy Singleton, saying that she was the unsung hero of the film, and she was actually the one who painted the mural in the Dolls short.
And those are really good mural.
Yeah. While talking about the Dolls, Rusty Cundiff said that they wanted the dolls slightly stylized, but nothing racist.
Right, because to a doll that would have been made of like a black person in the slave times would have been so offensively racist today. I can't think of the word for those. Like,
I can't either.
It's like a style that, so they weren't trying to do that.
And they also wanted the dolls to have multiple variations. The dolls got more and more crazed as they were attacking him. Even the different dolls for after it got shot up. The main doll, and actually the dolls don't really have like names, but the main doll, the one that gets like tied to the dartboard, had roughly 18 different heads. And some of the shots were done practically, like the actor kind of just like acting like he's struggling.
Yeah.
And it was known as a rod puppet, that version of it. So there's somebody off screen like moving its limbs around. This story originally had a different ending. In the original script, they found the senator hanging, but like very high, like they would have been confused as to how he got up there. But
and there was no like puppet attack.
Yeah, there was no big puppet attack at the end. But through test screenings and eventually the studio all said they wanted to see the dolls kill him. They said it wasn't worth it. Like they said it wasn't satisfying.
Right. It wouldn't have been as great if it was like a mystery and we didn't get to see on screen at least kind of what happened. So it was a good choice that they ended up changing it. This is probably one of the funniest tidbits of information I've found in a while.
We both laughed and rewound it.
I was like, wait, have you heard of this? Is that what? In the Crazy K short, there's a scene where they're walking him to the experimental chamber, and someone drags a cart with bodies hanging on it. And so my brain said those were dummies, but in actuality they were extras. They were real humans that were hanging there just to swing because they didn't find that using a mannequin or...
they said a mannequin looked too fake.
Yeah.
Even if it was a good one.
And that they were looking into getting real bodies.
And they said real bodies or getting better mannequins would have been too expensive. So it was cheaper to just hang real people.
Can you imagine? You were like, I was an extra in Tales of the Hood. I was one of those with the bodies hanging on the cart.
I was one of the naked hanging bodies covered in plastic.
It's so funny. And I thought it was hilarious, too, that they said how quick they had to do that because it's painful for the extras, obviously, to hang upside down, swinging like that. So it was a very, drag the cart across, quickly get them down, check it, then do it again.
Another interesting tidbit, I guess, I would say, from that short is that the contraption itself, the gyro psychomodulator, they were talking about, they're like, how fast can this thing actually spin? Mm-hmm. Because they just made the prop, and they were like, faster than you'd want to put a human in it. Right. I just thought that was really funny. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I just liked is that he tells the story. Director Rusty Cundiff tells the story of how people have come up to him after watching the movie or seeing this scene with the gang violence, and told him that they have left their gang or thought their life differently because of this movie.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really sweet about this movie, is that it's kind of underrated, but it has had a real impact and really affected people positively that have gotten a hold of it, you know?
Mm-hmm. As far as the devil makeup goes, they said they wanted the devil to be larger than life, a devil you would remember. The head makeup alone took 4 hours, but it turns out it was a really smart setup, because he would then step into this shell that was semi-permanent.
Yeah, gigantic. The wings and the chest and everything was not actually on his body. It was just his head, and he was kind of like a prop at the carnival where you stick your head in the thing. That's basically what it was. Which, for how short they used it, it makes sense.
We'll post a picture of it. Mm-hmm. Spike Lee was the executive producer of this film. He is famous for movies that make a statement, like one of his first films, Do the Right Thing, which I recommend you should watch.
Me?
No, I'm saying...
Okay.
You should watch
I have not seen it.
And if you do love this movie, well, good news. Very recently, it has gotten 2 sequels. Tales from the Hood 2. I'm not going to get too deep into this. Into the sequels. You should watch them.
Because we have not seen them either. So.
No. But it's cool because they're still anthologies. And in Tales from the Hood 2, Keith David actually replaces Clarence Williams as Mr. Sims due to Williams' retirement from acting.
It's a bummer. Now I don't want to see it at all.
Yeah, but Keith David is the perfect guy to replace him.
I don't know who he is.
Yes, you do. He's the sole survivor in The Thing.
Oh, you did tell me this.
Yeah,
I forgot. Yes. I forgot.
Tales from the Hood 3 stars Tony Todd. So, also, fantastic. We gotta watch him.
Mm-hmm. So there are roughly 12 on-screen deaths in this movie, starting with Martin Morehouse, who was injected with drugs and then drowned in his car.
Officer Billy, who has his heart ripped out of his chest.
Officer Strom, who's decapitated.
Officer Newton, who is stabbed with needles and then, I don't know, death by mural? He's turned into the painting.
Carl, who is broken via voodoo drawing and then burnt alive.
Brody, who is the assistant, and he's the one who falls down the stairs and cracks his head open.
Senator Duke Metger, who was swarmed and killed by dolls.
Lil Deke is the guy that Crazy K drives up on and guns down.
Mm-hmm. Then we also have Crazy K, who was shot a whole bunch.
Our final 3 are Bulldog, Ball, and Stack, who were gunned down by Crazy K's fellow gang members.
For this one, you definitely need to buy the special edition Blu-ray. Like I said, I bought it as soon as we watched this.
The documentary alone makes it worth it.
Yeah, definitely. But you also can rent it on Amazon and YouTube for, a couple bucks like everything else.
For our next episode, we're going to do a more recent movie. We will be talking about the 2019 film Parasite. This was written and directed by Bong Joon-ho. He is also known for his work on Memories of Murder and The Host. Both are also great films. I'm very excited to be doing some Korean horror. Mm-hmm. They are some of my favorites. It's going to be very exciting, very fun. There's actually a lot of cool behind the scenes for this one.
Yeah. Because this one's more of a thriller than a straight up horror, but...
Oh my god, we all were so stressed watching this movie.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next?
Yeah. If you haven't seen this movie, watch it.
Also, this may not be quote unquote horror, but when that guy peeks over the stairs, I will almost pee my pants every time.
It's terrifying.
It makes my heart skip a beat.
Man, we gotta watch this on the new TV. We haven't done that yet.
This movie is more terrifying than some, monster movie. This movie is so good. And we're going to talk about it
Next week.
next week.